Hey everyone, and welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are unpacking a major global climate risk assessment that honestly should have everyone paying very close attention, whether you're an agribusiness executive or just someone who loves hitting the cafe in the morning. We are looking squarely at the looming 2026 to 2027 El Niño weather pattern, and specifically how this big climatic shift is completely threatening the fragile global supply chains of two absolute staples of modern life. Yep, we're talking about chocolate and coffee.
So I really have to ask, is your morning mocha actually in danger? It sounds a little dramatic, I know, but when you look at the raw data, we've got to face the fact that our daily caffeine and sugar routines are officially relying on highly vulnerable, high-risk commodities. What is happening right now in the depths of the Pacific Ocean is about to have a very real, very measurable impact on exactly what you pay at the barista counter.
Here's our roadmap for today. We'll start with the Pacific Ocean catalyst, then look at West Africa's cocoa crisis, Southeast Asia's coffee crunch, follow that with the supply chain ripple effect, and wrap up with global prices and strategy.
All right, let's dive right into part one, the Pacific Ocean catalyst.
So, this whole thing actually starts deep underwater. The reports are showing increasing subsurface warming in the central and eastern Pacific Ocean, and this triggers a totally fascinating but pretty destructive four-step domino effect. First, that deep warm water gradually rises to the surface. Second, as that surface water warms up, the normal trade winds begin to weaken. Third, this causes the entire Pacific Ocean atmospheric circulation to shift eastward. And finally, step 4, global rainfall patterns become completely disrupted. If this subsurface warming keeps up its current trajectory through late 2026, we are looking at a moderate to strong El Niño event hitting right as the 2026-2027 crop year kicks off.
Moving on to Section 2, West Africa's cocoa crisis.
You know, it is honestly wild to realize that an astonishing 70% of all global cocoa production comes from just one highly concentrated geographic region, West Africa. That means when an El Niño pattern hits, it is targeting the absolute heart of the global chocolate supply.
And when we break that down by country, the estimated risk is just staggering. We are looking at potential production losses of 5 to 20% in Côte d'Ivoire and 5 to 15% in Ghana. Why is that? Well, El Niño brings delayed onset of rains and extended dry spells to this specific area. If those rains don't arrive on time, the entire growth cycle gets pushed back, or in some cases, severely stunted.
Let's actually zoom into the micro farm-level narrative to understand how this plays out in the dirt. When temperatures rise, we get higher evapotranspiration. That's essentially the plants losing water way faster than normal. This extreme water stress causes something literally called flower abortion, where the trees just drop their blossoms to survive. And if pods do happen to form, the young pods, which are called chorales, experience wilt. They just stop developing completely. The heat and drought ultimately leave the farmers with far smaller beans and a much lower overall bean count per pod.
Let's shift gears to Section 3, Southeast Asia's coffee crunch.
Now, it's absolutely crucial we contrast these specific climate risks by geography because they look totally different depending on where you are. Over in West Africa, like we just talked about, it's all about those delayed rains messing up the delicate cocoa flowering cycle. But if we flip over to Southeast Asia, it's a completely different beast for coffee. We are talking absolute severe dryness and extreme heat. In places like Vietnam, the primary threat isn't just a shifted rain schedule, it's the physical evaporation and depletion of the actual water reservoirs needed to keep the coffee plants alive.
And the impact of that severe dryness leads us to a massive, massive number, 10 to 20%. Under a severe El Niño scenario, Vietnam, which happens to be the world's absolute largest producer of Robusta coffee beans, could see their production drop by 10 to 20%. Now, Robusta is the backbone of espresso blends and instant coffee all over the world. Losing up to a fifth of Vietnam's output, that would send absolute shockwaves through the entire global coffee industry.
Meanwhile, neighboring Indonesia gets hit with a devastating double whammy. Not only are they facing one of the largest potential declines in their own cocoa production, but their coffee sector is heavily exposed too. They're forecasted to face intense drought and heat stress, directly leading to lower production, severely reduced bean quality, and massive volatility in what they can actually manage to export.
Which brings us to Section 4, the supply chain ripple effect. This right here is your classic supply chain domino effect. It starts at the farm level, with those lower yields and increased pest pressure because of the heat. Then it hits procurement. With fewer beans available, competition spikes, and that leads to frantic farmer side selling and massive quality inconsistencies. Next up, the processing plants face higher costs because their utilization rates drop.
They simply don't have enough raw product to run their facilities efficiently. And finally, it hits logistics. And hey, we haven't even talked about South America yet. Over there, El Niño causes the exact opposite problem: heavy, excessive rainfall. So while river transport completely halts in drought-stricken Asia, you've got flooded roads and landslides delaying port shipments over in Peru and Ecuador. It is literally a logistical bottleneck on all fronts.
Finally, let's wrap up with Section 5, Global Prices and Strategy.
So, what is the bottom line for the markets? The outlook paints a very clear picture. For cocoa and Robusta coffee, the outlook is strongly bullish. In commodity speak, bullish just means prices are expected to charge upward. Driven directly by those supply losses in West Africa and Southeast Asia we just mapped out, the data points to a very high probability of elevated prices and intense market volatility lasting throughout all of 2027. Arabica coffee is slightly more insulated, but it still faces a moderately bullish outlook due to weather uncertainty down in Brazil and Colombia. Okay, so the crucial point is, what do we actually do about this? For agribusinesses, exporters, and traders, the whole strategy basically boils down to proactive risk mitigation over the next 6 to 12 months. It's absolutely critical to secure forward supply contracts early. You've got to build up inventory buffers right now before the shortages hit. You must diversify your origin sourcing so you aren't completely reliant on just West Africa or just Vietnam. And finally, companies need to expand their weather monitoring and utilize satellite data to watch these specific growing regions like a hawk. Which leaves us with this final, somewhat provocative thought. We've traced subsurface ocean warming all the way across the globe to commodity shortages. But ultimately, when supply drops and raw material prices absolutely soar, that cost travels down the chain. When El Niño strikes in 2026, who will pay the true price for our daily brew and our favorite chocolate? Is it going to be absorbed by the big traders and roasters, or will that cost be waiting for you right at the bottom of your coffee cup? Keep your eyes on the Pacific, because the global markets for sure are. Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and I'll see you next time.